Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted that number 1 would be the Super Mario Bros. Movie, number 2 would be Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, number 3 would be John Wick Chapter 4, number 4 would be Air, and number 5 would be His Only Son. And I got only 2 out of 5 of my predictions right for this week, and I knew going into it, like, yeah, we have Mario, obviously, that's going to dominate, but, you know, with D&D and how John Wick are doing, that could flip-flop, and obviously it's Easter, so His Only Son could, you know, stick around longer, and then how's Air gonna do, and I don't think Paint's gonna make it in there, and a lot of people had problems with this one, but I was a little surprised I only got 2 out of 5 right. Congratulations to the one person who managed to get them all right this week, and congrats to you. Not sure how you pulled that one off, but congrats. Let's go over what happened in the overall top 10. Number 1 was obviously the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and there is a lot to talk about with this one, so let's just get right on into it. It opened for the 3-day weekend because this movie came out on a Wednesday, similar to Air when we talk about that one. This movie came out on a Wednesday, but for the 3-day weekend, it made $146 million, which is the biggest opening weekend for a video game movie, which is the second biggest 3-day opening weekend for an animated film of all time. That's behind the Incredibles 2's $182 million opening. I think some people count the 2019 Lion King movie because, you know, the entire movie is CG animation, but it's made to look live action. There's that endless debate. So if you want to count that one, this is technically the third one behind that movie's $191 million opening weekend. Nonetheless, though, this movie also is the highest opening weekend for a 2023 film so far. It is also Illumination's highest opening weekend that they have ever had. That adds to a domestic total in total for the 5-day of $204 million, which is the biggest 5-day opening ever, according to some people, which is pretty amazing to say the least. It has already, for video game movies, it has already outgrossed domestically the entire run of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. That movie's $190 million domestic run. Obviously, $14 million over that in your, first go is pretty incredible. So it is already the highest grossing video game movie domestically of all time in just its opening. That's insane. That's crazy to think about. It is already 8 million behind Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania's top spot for the highest grossing film of 2023 so far. And as far as Illumination's films and how they rank, it is already outgrossed Sing 2 by 42 million, Secret Life of Pets 2 by 46 million, and Hop by 96, and it is behind currently The Lorax by 10 million. So it's going to be Illumination's highest grossing film in no time. That's pretty insane. It's pretty insane that it broke all of these fucking records. And we're still just talking about the domestic numbers. Worldwide, it is open to 377 in total, which is the biggest global debut for an animated film since Frozen 2's 358 million. It has topped that. It is officially the biggest that you can get for an animated film, which is incredible. That's amazing. For Illumination, it has already outgrossed The Lorax by 27 million and Hop by 189 million, and it is behind Sing 2 by 27 million. So yeah, they're just going to continue to bulldoze through all these other fucking movies. As far as other video game movies, it is the 6th highest grossing one, beating the Angry Birds movie's $352 million worldwide run, and it is behind Uncharted's run by 23 million, and once it does that, it's entering the top 5 highest grossing video game movies worldwide. That's everything in total. And then for 2023, it's 90 million until it gets to the number 3 spot, outgrossing Ant-Man, and then it needs to get past 600 million for the 2 Chinese films that are already at the top, which I'm sure we're going to be seeing that happen at least, if it's not next weekend, it's the weekend after, because that's how much power this movie's going to have, having that A cinema score. The audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is pretty high, so although you have the critics score that's like, I'm kind of iffy on it, that's the consensus, the, conglomerate of all the reviews. Word of mouth is spreading that a lot of the audience members are enjoying this, you know what I mean? So I think, and especially since this is going to be the only family film for like quite a while, like next weekend is Renfield, and that's an R-rated comedy, and then after that is Evil Dead Rise and Beau is Afraid, so it's going to be a bit until, like, I guess Guardians would be the next, like, hey, families can come see this. So this movie's just going to continue to dominate, and with a budget of $100 million, they've already doubled that, and they've already tripled that. They're $23 million away from quadrupling that. This movie, obviously, we've talked about this many times. Illumination, they have shortcuts. Their movies are generally pretty cheap. They have a lot of not just animation shortcuts, but narrative shortcuts to kind of cut down on the runtime, yada yada. They get big stars to come into. So this movie, obviously, with that lower budget, can compared to a lot of other animated films, this is a very profitable, very successful movie in its opening. That's amazing. No matter how you feel about this movie, this is pretty incredible. And obviously, it's like, well, yeah, it's an IP, and it looks more faithful than the other film that came out in the '90s. I get that, but just this is still pretty cool, though, to say the least. You know what I mean? I don't know. There's something about it, because I saw the movie, I enjoyed it. Could it have been better? Yeah, sure. Of course, it's an Illumination film, first and foremost. But that being said, it was enjoyable, and everyone in the audience loved it as well. Audiences are loving this everywhere, so it's like, yeah, it's great to see something that is pretty, for the most part, generally kind of loved, especially by the fans, really embrace it. And now, not only is this movie profitable, but it's good for theaters as well, That's pretty great. It's not really great for the other movies that have kind of suffered, and who knows if they'll recover. In the next couple weeks, we'll be able to see, where these other movies below this one go, as far as, like, do they have enough staying power to, get back to where they could have been, or is it just kind of done? But let's move on to number 2, which was John Wick Chapter 4. It wasn't able to beat D&D last weekend. I thought that would hold over well enough for D&D, but for this weekend, just by a little bit, and we'll talk about D&D in a second, but this movie made $14.6 million, adding to a domestic total of $147 million. It is $24 million behind John Wick Parabellum, and worldwide it is sitting at $268 million, which is $59 million until Parabellum, and $32 million until they tripled their $100 million budget. Crazy that this and Mario cost the same budget, allegedly. It's kind of insane, but there you go. I don't really have much else to add to John Wick other than it's very, very narrowly ahead of our number 3. So when the official numbers come out, these could very well flip-flop. And like I also said before, we never know how these things will track. Maybe these movies will just continue to flip-flop here on out. But number 3 for right now is Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, kind of having a similar drop, percentage-wise to what John Wick had when D&D came out the weekend after. But like I said, only time will tell how that'll continue to do. John Wick had a pretty stellar opening, and D&D had a, slightly higher than expected opening, but it's not, great enough. And, they have a pretty, not high budget, but a high budget, that they have to keep up with. It made $14.5 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $62 million. So for the directors, it has outgrossed their film Vacation by $4 million, and is now behind Game Night by $7 million. So, good for them that this movie's about to be their highest grossing one. And worldwide, sitting at $124 million, it has outgrossed Vacation by $22 million and Game Night by $7. So worldwide, it is already their highest grossing film. Domestically, just a teeny bit more way to go, which they will get by next weekend. They're almost at their initial production budget of $150 million, so they just need $26 million to get to that point. And there's a lot of great word of mouth with this movie. A lot of people are talking about, the people who've seen it are like, either they really enjoyed it, or even if they're not high on the movie, they're like, I still kind of enjoyed it, though, you know what I mean? It took me by surprise a bit, So I genuinely do think if this movie doesn't, have a successful run in the theaters, if it's not profitable there, I do believe that, when it hits VOD and streaming, stuff like that, it will kind of have like this boom of popularity, a second life, if you will, in those formats. I'm still praying that in the next couple weeks, what I said last weekend remains true, that word of mouth is strong enough where people are like, okay, I've already seen Mario and I haven't seen D&D yet. Sure, let me give this a chance now. I'm really, and I've heard enough about it after a couple times, so I'm really hoping that's the case, because I would really hate for this movie that's like genuinely, like, for like franchise IP, it's really, really well written, well acted, well made. Like, there's a lot of care and craft, put into this that is just so cool. And I really hope people get to experience this movie, and I hope that it doesn't turn into one of those things where, it doesn't do great financially at the theaters, and then when it hits streaming, people are like, oh man, I can't believe y'all slept on this one, even though I'm one of the people who are now for the first time watching it at home. I didn't go to the theater. I think that's the thing I hate the most, is just, I'm glad that people are seeing the movie, but then I hate the fact that the people who do the tweets like that, they for sure didn't see it beforehand, you know what I mean? Ugh. oh well, we'll see how this goes. It's going to be more interesting or more depressing as the weeks go on. We'll have to wait and see. Number 4 is interesting as well, Air. Now, this is a movie that, I was wondering about, because it's a movie that's kind of about something that, has a fan base, Air Jordan, Michael Jordan, Nike. So there's, people who are like, yeah, I'm a sports guy. I understand the history of some Nike things, whatever. But I didn't know how it would do, especially in competing with some of these other films. And, some dramas, or like a kind of more like, not adult in like a, in like an erotic way, but like adult in like, it's an adult drama. Like, you can go in and you watch it. It's like, yeah, this is like it's a movie kind of made for, parents. You know what I mean? I don't know if that made any fucking sense. I'm sorry. But those usually don't do as well as they used to. And the budget is really high. According to Wikipedia, it's listed between $70 and $90 million, that's a lot. And I'm pretty sure a lot of it, you have a lot of stars in this one, but I'm sure a lot of it has to do with the fact that they've touted that this production company that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck have created, and this is one of their films now, they're all about making sure everybody, not just cast, the crew gets paid very equally and fairly. No one gets swept under the rug. No one gets, treated like shit, in this regard. So I'm sure that has a lot to do with it as well. And especially since Amazon, is going to be putting this on their streaming service at some point, I'm sure that they've already like paid them, you know what I mean? Like, they've paid enough where it's like, okay, we've covered the cost, or something like that, I'm hoping. Or when it does hit streaming, it'll really boom there, and then, hey, it's popular again. But right now, it's not a bad opening, making $14.4 million. It had a 5-day opening as well, so that adds to a domestic total of $20 million. And then worldwide, it is sitting at $30 million, so it's not enough where I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna have a fucking run. Maybe it could have strong staying power just because, my theater was pretty packed. I've heard from some other people, yeah, my theaters are pretty packed. Everyone was kind of into this movie too. So maybe it'll have some staying power in that regard. I'm hoping so. I'm hoping all these movies have, good runs. But I think that would just be really cool to see, especially for a movie like this that usually, when you announce it, it's like, okay, it's going to streaming. This is a movie that doesn't do well in theaters anymore, so we have to do streaming. Like she said a couple months back, just, fucking face planted at the box office, right? So Air could have had that same fate, but here it is in theaters. So it would be cool to see it, be profitable in that regard. Will it? Like I said, we'll just have to see how the word of mouth goes, and if it does even stand a chance against all these other movies that are coming out. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't want to be too pessimistic, but still, this is like, it's still pretty good. Like, it exceeded some other expectations as well. Some people thought it was just gonna, get fucking trampled, but here it is in like the double digits at least. So that's cool, to say the least. And let's move on to number 5, which is not His Only Son. It was Scream 6. I think last weekend there was a bit of a kerfuffle because this and His Only Son were like really close as well. This weekend, Scream 6 came out on top, making $3.3 million, adding to a domestic total of $103 million. Now, this is big because it has outgrossed Scream 2 by $2 million, and it is now a couple 100,000 over the first Scream, making it the highest grossing Scream film domestically. And then worldwide, of course, it is sitting at 158 million, and they are 3 million away from Scream 3. They still have a couple other movies to outgross, but domestically, that is still pretty cool. Like, the fact that they already outgrossed the more recent film, it's like, okay, yeah, obviously there's still more interest in this franchise now that it's back and seeing more of it, but the fact that it has now gone on to outgross the other films, especially the highest grossing one, and now this one is, that's saying something. That's saying something, at least to the domestic audience. It does make me wonder, and I'm just gonna throw this out there, because I was talking with a friend about this as well, for Paramount, because Paramount distributed this and they distributed D&D. And this because, the budgets are, different, 35 million for Scream, and either way it was going to, do well. Would it have been smarter for Paramount to swap release dates? Like, instead of Scream 6 coming out, when was it was the weekend before Shazam at the very least, but would that have been a better time to place D&D? That way you give it some time and word of mouth can truly spread. Shazam, disappoints the next weekend, so more people might be interested to just go see D&D. Would that have given D&D a better chance before Mario comes out right after, and that way Scream 6 can take its spot? And because it's a lower budget movie, and we saw how the audiences turned out for that one, it does well, because I wouldn't bet on it having a different run if they swapped. I think D&D might have actually benefited if they released it a little bit earlier. I don't know, though. That's just a speculating thing. I don't know that for sure. It was just something I was wondering, and I guess if you want to answer this question, if you know, or if you have a, insight yourself, I don't know, you can answer. I don't know. Let's move on to number 6, which was His Only Son, making $3.2 million, adding to a domestic total of $11 million. Like I said, the budget is $250,000 listed on Wikipedia. It still is. So yeah, there you go. It's like $10.5 million over that budget. So congrats to them. I think maybe I read this comment correctly last week. Apparently it is like the same production company as like the Chosen, that TV show, where they did a Fathom event for a couple episodes, and that, kind of dominated it in a specific like high spot at the box office once ago. If I read that correctly, then yeah, I guess that team, they know how to sell them. I don't know, I have nothing else to add. Happy Easter. Let's move on to number 7, which is Creed 3, making $2 million, adding to a domestic total of $153 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at $267 million, so it is still behind Rocky 4 by $33 million worldwide. So domestically, highest grossing Rocky Creed film. Worldwide, it's the second. So if this movie leaves in any time soon, and it doesn't, get released in any other places worldwide where it can really boost up, it might just, stop right here behind Rocky 4. But this movie did so well already. It's kind of like, you don't really need to go all the way in that respect. It's already, tripled its budget. It's good, like it did better than Jonathan Majors' other film, Ant-Man and the Wasp. So there you go. Not to bring up Jonathan Majors, obviously. Look into that. Let's not talk about it here. Number 8 was Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Oh, Jesus. Only making $1 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $56 million. For DC, it has outgrossed The Suicide Squad by $1 million, and it is now behind Shazam, the first one, by $84. That's the next one in the DC lineup. Worldwide, it is sitting at $128 million, so $235 million behind the original, and $38 million behind Wonder Woman 1984. So domestically, it can outgross the COVID ones. Worldwide, it has a hard time doing that. What do you know? And then, of course, David F. Sandberg's film, domestically, it is still behind Lights Out by $11 million. Worldwide, it is behind Lights Out by $20 million. That is crazy how, like, when I first started, I was like, yeah, give it a couple weekends, and it'll definitely outgross Lights Out at the very least. And now we're here like, oh shit, this declined really fast, and that's such a fucking bummer. Like, this movie has only been out for, almost a month, 3 weekends at the very least. It's like, this movie really sank fast, and obviously it just hit digital, VOD, premium streaming. I've seen some clips floating around on Twitter, and some people sharing the behind the scenes from the features you get from those kind of early VOD stuff. So yeah, this movie's already out on digital platforms, so even less of an incentive to go see this in the theaters. Some people, once again, I'm seeing some people tweet man, I can't believe I slept on this movie and you all did as well. This movie was actually pretty good. It's like, God fucking damn it. You know what I mean? Ugh. Maybe there will be some stat where it's actually, because of the booming numbers on PVOD sales, it's actually pretty good and it's going to turn a profit in some way, shape, or form. The Shazam side of DC is not getting rebooted. I don't know. I don't know anymore. Let's close out the video with these last two. Number 9 is Paint. Like I said, I didn't predict this to be in the top 5, and I was totally right, but I didn't think it would be below $1 million. It made $750K this weekend, and I don't know what the budget is. I'm assuming it wasn't too high because I've seen this movie. And obviously you have Owen Wilson, he's a name. And then, Stephen Root, some people know who Stephen Root is. Some people know who Wendy McClendon Covey. Some people know her from Goldberg, but there's not really a lot of other big name actors in that one, so I'm sure they were able to keep the budget relatively low. But still, if you watch the movie like I did, there's some pretty, noticeable ways they keep costs down. I'll just leave it at that, as far as, what their sets look like and how some of their jokes are executed and shit like that. It's either way, whatever the budget is, this $750K opening cannot be great for it. Big bummer, obviously. I know it did one of those Regal mystery movies, but even then it was oh, that was the mystery movie? And you didn't really hear much out of it afterwards, so yeah, it was kind of a dud on arrival. And then finally closing out the video, number 10, 1001, a good movie. That did a little bit better when I talked about it last weekend. Yeah, it was last weekend or the weekend before, whichever one. But it made $600,000, adding to a domestic total of $2.9 million. I still don't know what the budget of this thing is, and this $2.9 million total probably isn't enough to cover it, obviously. way. Or maybe it is. I don't know. But still, it did a little bit better than I thought, because I thought this would be like Paint. And when it opened, it was in like the millions, which surprised me. It had like number 7 spot instead of Paint, which was number 9. And obviously, you know, it didn't go on to have like great word of mouth. People have enjoyed this movie, but it's not enough to be like, you got to go see this. And it's not like it's playing wide enough either for that. But still, you know, I hope people discover this one, because it was a pretty solid drama. Now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Number 1, gotta go with the Super Mario Bros. Movie once again. I am not expecting a pretty big drop out of this. I think this is going to have a pretty great run. Number 2, I think, will be Renfield. Number 3, John Wick Chapter 4. Number 4, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. And number 5, Air. I don't think Russell Crowe's The Pope's Exorcist is gonna do all that well, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, just judging by how Pray for the Devil did a couple months ago. Anyways, what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.